Let's start with, your situation
Okay.
as an athlete.
Yes.
And you have been playing against a transgender individual
Yes.
in women's sports.
So the start of my junior year, my father had said something to me he is somebody that looks at results like nobody I've ever met. So he is looking at results and he's looking at start lists, and he mentions to me that he notices this name from running. And he had known that they were a transgender athlete. And so he came to me and he said, Cassidy, you'll be competing against a transgender athlete this year. And it's one of those moments where you're like, oh, this only happens in the news. Like, haha, Dad, it's not gonna happen, kind of thing. So I went to my first qualifier race, and sure enough, I was competing against a transgender athlete. I had lost to that race, but fast forward to the end of that season, I had made the Maine team, which is an accomplishment that few get to say they've done. And I was competing on this Maine team with this transgender athlete. The words defeating. It's defeating. The only time I have beat this athlete was at this competition, and I beat them in one race, which meant that I started ahead of them in the following race. Well, I was on a hill, and sure enough, I'd seen a Maine uniform pass me and cross the finish line in front of me, and it was this athlete. And in that moment, it's one of those things where it shouldn't be a goal I have. It shouldn't be a goal that I have to beat a biological male. I have my own competition. I have my own females in my own category. That is fair and an equal opportunity. It shouldn't be my goal to beat a biological male, but it was. And when I didn't, it was super defeating. And I shouldn't be defeated by that, and I was, and that was hurtful.
Do you go into races now with a different mindset because it's going to be tougher?
Yeah.
Do you go in feeling, well, if I get second or third place, I guess that's good enough?
As a woman, I know where I stand in what I believe, and I know at the end of that race that I was a place ahead.
Your friends, you're not alone, right?
Not alone.
And you have said that you believe this is not so much about you because you're going to go on to college and you're not planning to compete. You're going to focus on your pre-med and your other studies.
Yeah.
So you've said that this is not exactly about you, but about the girls coming up behind you.
Yeah, so my plan next year is to go to college, and I'm not going to compete competitively anymore. So this fight isn't for me necessarily. I've fought this for 2 years now, and it's been hard. It's been a battle. But this is a fight I'm fighting for the next generation of girls and so on. I want to see them be able to compete fairly the way that I have been able to for most of my career. And I'm not willing to back down for these girls. I want to be that role model. I want to show them that, not only do I want you to have a fair and equal opportunity, but that you don't back down from fights that are wrong. This is wrong. And I want them to have that opportunity. And so I'm not gonna back down, and I love to mentor younger girls. I'm a rec track coach. I do lots of soccer camps, and I love to see their drive and I love to see their passion. And I'm not gonna watch that go away because they're scared of losing to a boy. And I'm not okay with that. And I want them to be able to compete fairly and equally.
It sounds like you have other fellow athletes on your ski team or in cross country or the other sports the transgender person is playing or competing in.
Yes.
A lot of your friends, or at least some of them, you've said, are afraid to speak out and are just kind of going with the flow on this. Tell me about that and how it's affected your peer group.
A couple of them would say they've fought this issue for more years than they can count now. It comes to a point where they've gone to a point where nobody's willing to listen. And now they're at stages in their life where they could truly lose opportunities for speaking up. And I don't think that's right, but at the same time, I can't judge them. And I don't blame that on them. I blame that on people, you know, even people that have like censored Representative Laura Libby. You know, I blame that on people like that because people are afraid to speak up for what's right out of fear for what they could get back, and that's not fair.
The response to the team in your Nordic skiing, what has the response been? Do they interact with this person? Is this person an active part of the team? What's the environment with this introduction of this new element?
You know, I've told so many people how frustrating this is because we show up to a meet and, you know, we start in interval starts. And when all the girls go, you know, there's the normal cheering for other teams, there's the this. And then when this person goes, it's like the crowd roars for this person. It's like we must over support them to make sure that they know that we're not against them. Why? Why do we feel like that is necessary? As a female, that's defeating. This is a male competing in our category. Why are we not giving the roaring cheers to the females who have to compete against this person? It's beyond frustrating.
Do you find it just ironic that the argument could even be made that they're cheering for biological males in your sport?
Yeah, I think Representative Laura Libby said it best, that feminists, you know, from years ago would be rolling around in their graves knowing that this is happening. I have no words, you know, for these people that look at this as, you know, we're supporting women's rights, we're supporting this girl, but where do I come into play? You know, where does my rights, where is the fine line where you are now violating my rights and my opportunities and taking away future generations' opportunities? And for people that can look at us and say, oh, it's just a small amount. There's 2 athletes in Maine that we know that have made news currently that we know of, and those 2 athletes have impacted so many girls. Because when you think about it, that one athlete, you know, they don't even have to win the race, but every athlete that falls behind them has now been bumped a place. So your 2 athletes are impacting a whole group of girls. So it's not just a small group. And for people that want to say this isn't an issue that is impacting a lot of people, or when I had an interview up in Aroostook County, you know, they said, we've never heard of this. That's because they want to tell you that it's not happening, but that's not true. And it's time that we have to speak up and we have to say this isn't right and this is violating my rights now.
Have you missed out on opportunities because of this?
You know, I think that it's a hard thing to know because I wouldn't truly know. I know, like when it comes to the Maine teams for skiing, there's only so many spots available for that. I didn't make it this year, but you know, who's to know what opportunities could have come had this individual not been competing against us. And for many girls, you know, the opportunities. People didn't make that Maine team because a spot was taken. People lost a place on the podium because that spot was taken.
You know, a lot of people have been supportive, but what's the message to the people who are just dismissing your concerns?
Think of all the women in your life. And if you can look at them and say, I'm going to take an opportunity away from you, then sure, go ahead. But the reality of it is very few people will look at the women who have fought years and fought hard and look at them and say, I'm going to take an opportunity away from you. They can't say that. But right now they're doing it. And they're not thinking of the women. They're thinking of making sure that 2 individuals feel included. And I'm not saying that this is a simple overnight issue. You know, I'm not saying this is something that gets fixed one day. But it needs to change. And there needs to be change. And these people need to look at the women of their life and say, I'm going to fight for you.
Do you have anything to say to your transgender competitor?
I would say, oh, this is a hard one. I want them to have the opportunity to compete as well. and I want them to also compete in a fair and equal category. But that's not my category, and that's not where I'm competing. And I love them because I'm a Christian, and I believe that we love everybody. And just because I'm speaking out on this doesn't mean that I don't love them the same that I would love everyone else. But I want all of us to be able to compete fairly and equally. And right now, that's not happening.